There were more downs than ups for the Cubs in 2024. We recap the year next.
You are Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Sam Olber, I'm a lifelong fan, taking my passion into a discussion with you on all things Cubs. Thank you for being part of the show and making Locked On Cubs your first listen today. And the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day, like the video, and comment anything below. Happy New Year to everybody celebrating out there. This will be the last Locked On Cubs episode of 2024. We will be back on Friday to kick off what I think is going to be an outstanding 2025 for our show. Real quickly, before we get into what I want to talk about today, just a couple quick news notes I want to lead with because that's my responsibility, our responsibility to keep you updated on the Cubs. The Cubs signed a kind of a project 4A guy, reliever, and Ben Heller. Spent his time with the Pirates last year. Kind of a classic project guy, had really nice strikeout numbers and good numbers in the minor leagues. You know, maybe he'll translate it to the big leagues, maybe he won't. Kind of a depth guy. And then Mark Feinsand of MLB.com reported that the Cubs were one of the teams that were in on utility infielder Josh Rojas, a name that has been mentioned a few times on this show. That I think Matt and I both agree probably made the most sense for the Cubs if they went in that direction. He could play third pretty consistently. He could play a little bit of second. And I guess I was really thinking about this after a couple episodes ago, reflecting on it. I talked about the need of a righty bat, but that's really for first to back up Bush, because if Shaw is going to play third, you got Swanson at short, you got Nico at second. You actually do want one of those utility infielders not playing first to hit left-handed, which Rojas does. So that makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't be surprised if that move got done because it's a perfect fit for both sides. So that's the updated news and notes. But today I want to talk about 2024. On a Cubs level, personal level, and then a little 2025. Let's start with, you guys know me. I tend to be a little bit, as they would say, pessimistic. And I don't think this was a very good calendar year for the Cubs. I'll be the first to say it. And so let's start with the negatives of 2024. Remember, we're going calendar year. So this isn't going to talk anything about council that was technically done in 2023. Let's start with the offseason of 2024. So not this specific one right now, but starting in January of last year. There were some really good things that happened that we'll talk about. But overall, I think we all felt like going into the year, the Cubs could have and should have done more to put themselves in a position where they were the clear-cut favorites to win the NL Central. And believe it or not, I believe on opening day, the Cardinals were the favorites in the division. And of course, Milwaukee caught everybody by surprise and cruised to the division. But I just thought the offseason, we're going to talk about one obvious really good move, really two really good moves that were made last year. But, you re-signed Bellinger, which we all wanted and celebrated. That didn't work out that well. You signed Hector Neris. That didn't work out that well. But it was just going into winter of last year. And I don't remember exactly when Shohei Ohtani signed, but I think it was sometime in 2024. I really thought the Cubs had a real shot at him. I fell into that bait, and I thought the Cubs had a chance to do something really special last year in the offseason to really go all in, and they'd already added Counsell, and it just didn't happen. So, that was a negative part of 2024, was just the whole offseason leading up to opening day. And then obviously the play on the field. You look at it, it was just, April was good. July, August, and September were fine. It was just 2 months of just such a slog and malaise to watch this team not hit and lose close game after close game. And it just became really frustrating. And, outside of April, when they were staying above water and staying afloat with a bunch of guys hurt, it never really felt after June that this Cubs team was going to make a postseason run and make it to the playoffs. They had a couple of nice teases. I remember going into Cleveland after they had swept the Sox thinking, all right, we got some life, and we were up 3-0 in that game. We ended up losing and got swept in that series. I remember, I think it was Labor Day where they had one more push left in them, and Lopez went out there with the hamstring and gave up that game. Every time they gave you a sense that things were going to get turned around, it just never did. And the losses were just, and I know I take losses harder than pretty much most people, and I'm going to work on that. It's one of my resolutions to just work on understanding it's just one game. But the 8-0 loss after, leading against the Padres, losing that game, the Arizona game where they took the lead 11-8 and, lost on the last hit from Marte and then in extras. And so the Monday Giants games, back-to-back Mondays, Hector Neris in the 9th inning at Wrigley, 3-run lead. They lose that. And then a week later, they have a late lead. They should have been up by 8-9 runs. It was just, there were so many heartbreakers. And it was just like, we knew, back to my original point, that this wasn't an ultra super talented team, and they just couldn't afford to lose the type of games that they lost. They lost so many games late, and it was the exact same formula every game. It felt like May and June. Couple of opportunities to blow the game wide open. They don't do it, leave runners on. So now they're clinging to a 1 or 2 run lead late, and then the bullpen comes in and loses it. And it was like, well, was it the bullpen's fault? Was it the offense fault? And the answer is just yes. And it was just really tough. And, you add in the excitement factor, I have here in my notes. It just wasn't a very fun team to cover. And if it wasn't a very fun team to cover, I think it's fair to say it wasn't a very fun team to watch. I didn't find myself like ultra excited to watch Cubs games last year. And I think part of that was, the baseball season starts in April, but May and June is when you really start getting kicked into gear. The weather starts to change. The days get longer. It doesn't even matter what your job is. Like, I have a job where summer is really, really busy. But even so, summer's still the best time of year. You're excited. You're just up later. And by the time summer really got kicked into gear, the Cubs, were really struggling. And I think that took a lot of our energy away and frustrated us as a fan base. And it just wasn't a fun year. It just wasn't a fun year on the field. And the last negative, I promise I have positives coming. The last negative is the payroll stuff. It is beyond frustrating. And we're finally, after really a year and a half of trying to just get any sort of hint of why the Cubs aren't spending, we're finally starting to get a little bit of an answer with this Jesse Rogers piece. Bleacher Nation's had some great pieces about these private equity firms that are investing in baseball and or teams. And basically what's happening is the bottom line, when these private equity people get involved, the bottom line number becomes more important than what's going on the field. It's an investment. And even though from an outside perspective, we may think the Cubs are just, they just print money. They print money. Well, clearly the bottom line isn't what some people invested in the team want it to be. And that's impacting the way that they spend. And, in that Rogers article that he released on Christmas Eve, I thought the biggest news is he said that, it's likely that the Cubs don't invest in one of those, quote, mega deals, unquote, until the CBA is changed and collectively agreed upon to make things a little bit more even. And, it's frustrating. We half-heartedly went after Ohtani. That didn't feel really serious in hindsight. Didn't even go after Soto. Didn't go after Burns. And, we can sit here and argue if it's true or not. But the reality of the situation is the Cubs are operating like an upper-level mid-market team. And that's frustrating. And why did they have to switch from WGN? That was the best thing about them. Why did they have to switch from the local TV? Is Marquee good? It opens up all these questions, and I think it's very fair to be frustrated about that, no matter what happens this season. So that's something to keep an eye on. And I'm not a business investor guy, so I can't give you an expert opinion on that. But that does feel like a part for me of the negative of 2024. But there were some positives. Quite a few, actually, and we're just going to go in chronological order here. Shota Imanaga probably being the highlight of the 2024 Cubs. They signed him right before the convention in 2024, and he from the minutes he did his introductory press conference, he was just a breath of fresh air, a shining light for this team, and he was wonderful. There was the minor league situation or the young player situation. Matt Shaw got off to a tough start and then has now become clearly the Cubs' number one prospect. Pete Crow Armstrong gets off to another tough start in the beginning of the year, right around May, June, but then turns his season around. He looks like a guy with, an extremely high floor and an unlimited ceiling. I was actually debating coming into the show today if I was going to just do a PCA show because we haven't done one of those in a while. I want to talk about where I'm at with him. But Shaw, PCA, their development in their respective levels, I thought was a really good positive. And I really think this is important to say. So many things went wrong last year. Yes, the starting pitching was very good, but we know that was more aided by the weather. The offense was hurt by the weather. The bullpen wasn't good. They lost so many critical, close games, and they were an 83-win team. And to be honest with you, they kind of mailed it in the last week of the year. They probably were about an 84, 85-ish win team. And so, to get that extra 5 wins, it's not that much. And it brings you to the biggest positive of 2024. They took a big swing with Kyle Tucker, and I'm really excited about it. I think the honeymoon phase with that is over, and I'm ready for the next move. But to me, I think that's our biggest highlight of the 2024 calendar year was the Cubs have brought in a true superstar level talent. Now, going back to my negative side, how much of that was, well, we know we can go after Kyle Tucker because he's actually going to save us money, in the financial situation. It is what it is, right? He's a superstar level player. And you have to look at it. You have to group it like this. Isaac Paredes and Cody Bellinger have been moved out, and moving in is going to be Matt Shaw with Kyle Tucker. And how much of a win increase will that substitution or trade get you? I think it's fair to say maybe 3, 4, maybe even 5 wins. Don't forget, guys, Isaac Paredes, you got to compare it not to what you think he could have been, but what he was last year. The combination of Christopher Morel and Isaac Paredes last year at third base was a net negative for the Cubs. So if Matt Shaw, maybe it's a Josh Rojas as a tandem, if they come in here and they give you 3 WAR, there's, it doesn't actually work out like this mathematically, but just for the sake of the show, there's 3 wins. And then you'd like to hope that Kyle Tucker is going to be 2 to 3 wins better than Cody Bellinger was last year. So, there you go. That could be your 5, 6 wins right there. Obviously, there's so many other factors, but I think that's easily the biggest positive. The Cubs have brought in a superstar, a superstar level talent that I can't wait to watch on an everyday basis. And, I do think going into 2025, the energy is much better than where we were last year at this time. And that's another positive. So what's next is 2025. And coming up next, we're going to talk about our goals for that calendar year. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscriptions tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. on. We are back here on Locked On Cubs, and we briefly broke down the 2024 calendar year, probably more negatives than positives, as it should be when you're a team that had playoff expectations and didn't make it. But there were some positives, and now there is energy with the Kyle Tucker acquisition heading into 2025. The Cubs closed out 2025 by trading for Kyle Tucker, signing Carson Kelly to shore up the catching position. They traded for Eli Morgan, a nice relief piece, and signed Matthew Boyd. That's really all the significant moves that they've done so far. You would think in 2025 they're going to add another starter, add a utility man like a Josh Rojas that we talked about earlier, and then hopefully add some relief depth and maybe even a back end reliever that could close games or set up games at this point. So what are the goals for 2025? I thought long and hard about this because if I go on brand with how I am as a podcast host, the goal should be to win a championship. That should be the goal every year. That's what it's about. It's about banners. It's about championships. But you have to have a realistic element to it. If the Cubs make the playoffs and are hot at the right time, could they hang in there with the Dodgers for 5 games? Sure. The Padres were within 1 game of beating them. But the realistic goal for me, because the Dodgers are better, I think as we stand here right now, the Dodgers are much better than the Cubs. The Braves, the Phillies are much better than the Cubs. The Mets probably. The Diamondbacks maybe. The Padres maybe. But notice one thing. I have not set an NL Central team yet because there is nobody in the NL Central right now on paper that's better than the Cubs. We've played and done and seen this movie before. We know how good the Brewers can be and how much they can play above expectations. But my number one 2025 goal for this franchise is they need to win the NL Central. And not only do they need to win the NL Central, but they need to start beating the Brewers consistently. It's becoming a thing. And it's becoming frustrating. And I don't know what that exact number is. If they play them 13 times, do they have to go 7-6, 8-5? I don't know. I just want to go into Milwaukee and feel like it's not a foregone conclusion. We're going to lose 2 out of 3, and both games that we lose will be close, and we'll find a way to lose late. I'm tired of losing to those guys. I just am. And, I'm not trying to disrespect the Reds, Cardinals, or Pirates. Maybe they stand in the way, but it's like a 2-part first goal. The first goal is I just want to be better than the Brewers. I know that sounds corny, but we have to start beating the Brewers. They have controlled this division and controlled us for far too long, and then in doing so, they should win the division. As it stands here, I can't really see the only other team I could see being a problem in this division long term would be Cincinnati, just because maybe they get some of their young players back and their pitching has enough upside and they got a new manager and they're tough. But the Cubs need to win this division. That is the big bold goal for 2025. And I understand if the Cubs win this division and let's say they get bounced in the wild card round 2-0, it's not going to feel like a very good year. And people are going to say, well, they need to do more. They need to spend more. They need to get to the Dodgers level. They need to get to the Mets level. I get that. But you gotta walk before you could run. And the Cubs need to win this division. Notice I didn't say playoffs. Look, I will not complain if the Cubs get a wild card spot. Fine. But the number one goal for me is to win the National League Central and start changing the tide and start taking over this division again, because, the Cardinals are going to go into a little bit of a rebuild here. And, the Reds and Pirates, sure, they got some young talent, but they don't strike me as a team that, oh boy, we got no chance for 5 years. It's the Brewers. That's who we need to take control of and start beating. So that's the number one goal. And then everything else flows through that. On an individual basis, I would love to see, one of PCA or Matt Shaw just have a really, really big year. I mean, I would love to see both of them, but from a goal perspective, I don't think that's very fair. But I think one of those two where we go at the end of the year, one of our best players was one of these two guys. I think that's fair. I would really like to see Cade Horton and Ben Brown make their major league impact known this year. Brown, to be fair to him, was doing that before he got injured. Cade Horton needs to take a step forward. I would love to see, I get so excited when I think about, late September pennant race baseball or October, and coming out of the bullpen, we have Cade Horton and Ben Brown. Horton's, long relieving, and then Ben Brown's, max effort for a late inning. I mean, it could be really, really special. Those guys are really talented. So, those are the big goals. Obviously, I can come on here and say winning a championship. And of course, that is the number one goal every team has. But realistically, that's going to be really challenging. But to me, when I say goals, I'm saying if it doesn't get accomplished, it's a failure. If this team does not win the division in 2025, it's a failure. They need to get it done. Jed, Carter, Craig, let's go. It's time to win the division. Coming up next, we're going to close out the last episode of the year with my personal best and worst of the year. We are back here on Locked On Cubs. Best and worst of 2024 for me. I will start with the worst, and that is just sports in general. This was just not a fun sports year for me. I had some really nice positives with Illinois, U of I sports. The basketball team made the Elite Eight. Their football team won 9 games, which I think that's like the third time in my life that's happened. So that was great. But I don't even just mean Chicago sports, Bears, Bulls, whatever. Just in general, I just felt like sports was not as enjoyable as it used to be. I don't know if it's me just starting to grow out of it a little bit, maybe growing up a bit, or what I think it is just like the analytics and all the information that we have in sports. It might make the game more efficient, but it's just not as fun to watch. Like this past Christmas Day, every Christmas Day, I've watched at least 2 or 3 NBA games. I've loved the NBA. It's, believe it or not, the Cubs are my favorite team, but the NBA was always my first love. Even as a kid, I mean, I would play the video games. I would have everybody's jerseys, the TNT, the All-Star game. I love the NBA. I just loved it. Like I just loved it. And this year, I want nothing to do with it. I watched the fourth quarter of the Warriors-Lakers game on Christmas night. That was literally just out of respect to LeBron and Curry. That's the only game I watched. I'm not enjoying it. Football's been okay. It's hard to get super excited when the Bears are this bad. I honestly watched the most baseball, and forget the Cubs. I'm not even talking about my team, but it just sports just hasn't been, I feel like, as good. I'm curious what you guys think in the comments. If that's just maybe I'm just growing out of it. But it just doesn't feel like it was as fun to watch as it normally has been. So that's been my worst, because sports is my number one passion in life. And so when that's not as good, it's a big deal. My best of the year, and it's corny and it's cliche, but it's true, has been this program. And, to be honest with you guys, it wasn't a great personal year for me. Nothing tragic happened or anything like that, but just being fully transparent, it just wasn't. I didn't have a great personal year. And this show provides me with like tons of amazing distractions and entertainment and fun and excitements and interactions with everybody. I don't think I go like 48 hours without interacting with a listener on some sort of social media. And, in 2025, we had some live shows. We've interacted with so many people, and it's been a blast. The show has been, if I'm being genuinely honest, like a dream come true. And so, that easily has been the best part of 2024 for me. I hope everybody out there has something. It doesn't have to be something that's this public, where you could just get away sometimes when you need to. And it just provides you with everything that you need: a distraction, like a therapeutic environment. I mean, when I'm doing this show, it's me, it's Matt, it's you guys in this show. My mind's never elsewhere. Like right now, preparing for this show, I took a couple notes, did some research. It's a blast. It's a blast to do the show, and easily the best part of 2024. And if I'm being honest with you, I think 2025 is going to be much better. We're really starting to get a hang of this, and I know I could speak for myself. I'm learning things and improving in regards of being a podcast host, and learning things that I didn't know, and it's just great. It's great. So hopefully the Cubs can build off that momentum in 2025. I do believe 2025 is going to be a far better year for the Chicago Cubs than 2024. I can't wait for Cubs Con. I can't wait for the season to get started, because like I said, I'm not watching many other sports. I'm all in. I'm ready for mid-March, Cubs, Dodgers in Japan. So I wish everybody a happy new year. We're back Friday to start 2025, and we're going to start 2025 in a big way. There's some big things coming. You guys are going to love it, and it's going to be an awesome year. Thank you so much for checking out this edition of Locked On Cubs. You give us 20 to 30 minutes, and we'll give you all things Cubs with a laugh or two along the way. Be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube, smash the like button for the algorithm, and leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. I'm Sam Olber, and this is Locked On Cubs. Happy New Year, everybody.